and I was particularly concerned about this logo, of which there's been a large amount of coverage in the media recently.
Why are you concerned?
The reason I'm particularly concerned is this logo was designed...
What's your reason?
Yeah, the logo was designed 4 years ago, 2007. At the time, there were many people that were very concerned, from charities involved in epileptic charities, and they noted that when the logo was shown both on television and on the internet, it caused several people who were epileptics to suffer seizures as a result of seeing the logo. When I looked closely, when somebody pointed out the logo to me, I have a very deep interest in occultic matters, in other words, matters that are not generally known throughout society. As I mentioned, my background is in law, so I tend to be very critical and very analytical when I see items like this. And when it was pointed out to me, I noted immediately the symbolism of both the Olympic rings and also the design that won the London Award in 2007.
Can you show?
Yeah. So this is the logo that won the design. Now, if the viewers, which are clearly, I believe, very intelligent people, when you look at these objects set out here, you will see quite clearly there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's another one immediately in the centre. Now, we're talking about 2012, so clearly that would be the 2012. But 2012 are 4 specific objects. That should be all. So there shouldn't be need for anything else. But you can see quite clearly in the centre there's a 5th object. So on the face of it, that doesn't make sense. And none of this has been articulated in the mainstream media. Okay? So
you shall explain about these.
Oh, okay, right. So, but when we look at this, things become very much clearer. And what do we have here? Quite clearly, we have Z-I-O-N, Zion. Okay? Now, interestingly enough, there was a newspaper recently on the 1st of March. This is an Evening Standard, which is seen by very many millions of people in London. And it makes it clear, this is the Evening Standard, Russian publisher who's Jewish, and the heading is Iran threatens to boycott 2012 games over, quote, racist logo that spells out Zion, unquote. Now if we look at it, it says that London Olympic chiefs today defended the logo after Iran claimed to conceal the word Zion. Well, I'm sure your audience, after looking at this, which have just shown up, it's very clear. Is this a possibility, or is this definitely the only possibility? Because out of the 5 objects, this clearly makes Zion.
Yes.
So they insisted the £400,000 logo, in other words $1 million was the cost, made up of supposedly 4 jagged figures, but we say they're 5, aren't they? Represents the year 2012, nothing else, despite claims from the Islamic State that it's racist. Iran's threatened to boycott the London Games unless the logo is changed, and in a letter to the International Olympic Committee, Iran Games chiefs said videos on YouTube show the digits were reorganised, with the 2 becoming Z, the 1 an I, the 0 an O, and the final 2 being read as an N. Zion is a hill in Jerusalem where the Jewish religion is said to have begun, and is taken, this is very important, as a synonym for Israel. So what we're talking about here, which it appears to the objective viewer that this is something which has actually been hijacked by an entity. We have had a transference from an innocuous 2012 to Zion. So it's turned something which is merely a symbolic number into a religious, well, it's not religious, it's actually a secular, symbolic, occultic entity. Yes?
What about these design and what about the color and...
As regards the London 2012, there were some other words, candidate city, but the important thing is the rings. What do they represent? And going back to this one, it's crucial to understand they're 5 in number. That gives it the occultic, the satanic number, which links to the pentagram. Okay? So anyone who's involved in Satanism or in witchcraft, anything which is totally anathema to what you believe in your country with the moral, ethical, spiritual dimension, it has a pentagram. So any practices in Satanism carried out with a pentagram, and that links to the cardinal directions. So we see this very clearly in these rings, the Saturn rings or satanic rings, which also has a linkage to Freemasonry. Okay, as this connects to the New Testament and also to the Old Testament, because the structure of them is 4 plus 1. Because in the Old Testament you have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and then the secondary interpretation of the law is Deuteronomy, reinterpretation of the law. And you have exactly the same in the New Testament. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. Reinterpretation, 4 plus 1, is the Acts of the Apostles. Okay? So that's a Kabbalic structure. You have exactly the same here. And here you have the green ring, which represents north, the red ring, which represents south, the yellow ring, which represents east, and the blue ring represents west. But the crucial ring is to do with what is the intention. Now, the intention, is it white witchcraft or is it black witchcraft? It's made very clear this is black satanic witchcraft. So the black ring is in the centre, and that links to the universality of the secular entity. And one of the crucial aspects which I think your viewers would be interested to know, there is a very, very powerful entity in this country called Freemasonry, and they are in excess of 1/3 members, but only men allowed to join. And that entity controls politics, it controls law, but crucially it controls banking and the City of London, the square mile. Okay? And that is exactly the same in the United States, Washington, and you have private entities in the United States which are run by those that control the central bank of the United States, such as the Council for Foreign Relations. So it comes as no surprise that the President and the Vice President invariably, and of course the Secretary of State, invariably tend to be invitees, because you have to be invited into it, of the Council for Foreign Relations, and they determine foreign policy, such as what's going to happen, say, in North Africa, or what's going to happen in Iran. And it's crucial to be aware of involvements of the Council for Foreign Relations. Another point that needs to be borne in mind, what purports to be 2012, but is clearly ZION. In that specific object, which is the 0, you have the rings of Saturn, satanic rings as it were. And that is important that it's in that object, not in any others, because the 0 links to the universality of it all. and that is also why this dot, or the square, and that's significant why it's a square, which is in the centre, the point, the dot, which links to Freemasonry, the square, because two of the crucial objects in Freemasonry is the square, the 4, and the 3, the circle. And that also links to the square and the compasses. But this is something that you will never, ever hear or see in the British media or in the United States media. It's off limits. Well, the thing is, I mean, as I say, many people have made comments that they think it's unbelievable that anybody could be paid $1 million for coming up with something like that. And at the time, all the main newspapers made comments back in 2007, 4 years ago, the fact that a child could have come up with that. And it's not very difficult if you do some research to see what the newspapers had to say about it. They were scathing. But having said that, that does not explain the agenda, which is why that logo had to be the chosen logo, because it has all the components necessary to make a very, very subtle, covert, occultic point.